Welcome to Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Unlearn the Crap TV is more than just a show. It's a movement towards breaking free from the disempowering structures designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many. It's about education, healing, and unlearning the detrimental beliefs that have been ingrained in society for generations. So now, please welcome the host of Unlearn the Crap TV, Kathy Baldwin.
Welcome to another episode of Unlearn the Crap and Level Up. Your soul is calling. My name is Kathy Baldwin and I am your host. For those of you who are new to this podcast, let me explain what Unlearning the Crap means. CRAP is an acronym. It means the conditioned responses and automatic programming that go into our limiting thoughts and beliefs. It comes from our ancestral trauma. It comes from beliefs from our society and our upbringing and our family. It comes from marketing and every disempowering thought that we've ever had. But it is more than that, because crap is what it sounds like. It is excrement. It is that which the body is trying to process and release that does us no good. And while it can all go through our digestive system when we're dealing with our food, we also have crap that comes from those conditioned responses and automatic programming that sets off our central nervous system, which in turn affects our gut microbiome, which is the cause of inflammation. Inflammation is a direct correlation to disease within our body. So we cannot ever think that our thoughts have no value or they don't matter just because they're in the energetic realm. Everything affects everything. And today, my guest, we are going to be talking to Butch, and we are going to be talking about the interconnected, interrelated systems that is our mind, body, heart, soul, and how it affects us. Welcome, Butch. It's so good to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. It's going to be a lot of fun today.
I'm looking forward to this. But before we get started, you've heard what the definition, according to me, is about what crap is. Could you please tell me and our audience what crap you needed to unlearn so that you could level up?
So if you got like 10 or 12 hours to go through all of that, I mean, it's like we're all to go through every bit of that, you know? Sure. I can list 4 or 5 right off the top of my head.
Perfect.
The number one thing, you know, growing up was I was always thought that my worth as a man was going to be decided by how much money I made. Not whether I enjoyed something or not, but how much money are you making, you know? And so, you know, I spent 20 years on a job that I literally hated. I had great benefits. I had a great schedule. By most people's standard, I should be the happiest man on the planet. And yet I would get off on a Wednesday or Thursday morning. I had the weekend off every weekend. First thought I had out getting into my car was, oh God, I have to come back on Sunday night. And it was like, I started to see that it wasn't the money. The money didn't do anything for me. And then when I got into doing what I do, I started to see that what made my life was how do I benefit other people? Secondly, I always had to win. And I was an athlete, and growing up a 3-sport athlete, I was large. I was 6'4", 220 pounds in high school. I was very athletic. I was good enough that I could get on teams easily, but I didn't have the mindset and the work ethic that I needed to be able to be good at what I did. I could have been good, but just didn't have the mindset because I was going back to, I need a job to make money. You can't make a living doing this. And then lastly, in finding relationships, my first wife that I had was a very nice woman. I thought having a submissive wife would be great for me. And what I learned was that was not great for me either. I needed an intelligent woman who could speak her mind, who could stand side by side with me and we fight the battles together. And once I found that, my life changed. And so those are the top three that come off the top of my head.
Okay. I am writing copious notes of things I want to come back to. But before we come back to that, Butch, could you please introduce yourself to everyone? Now that you've unlearned this crap, how are you leveling up and serving the world?
Well, to begin with, I am a self-described muscle nerd. I study the muscles of the human body from a movement aspect and from an emotional aspect. I get great joy out of just watching people walk and figuring out what's wrong with them just by the way they walk. So that's kind of how sick I am about that. But I actually am a massage therapist who studied neuromuscular massage and sports massage. I later was introduced to a man named Aaron Mattis who taught me about active isolated stretching, learning how to stretch the body the correct way. And then I was very fortunate to have 5 mentors, 2 of which were neurosurgeons that studied the brain, that started tying together to me the emotions and the brain of our body with the fascia and the muscle system of the human body. Like I said earlier, when I was talking about unlearning the crap, I spent 20 years on a corporate job that I hated. And the moment I found this, or this found me, I should say, I fell in love with it. It became the love of my life. So to be able to see someone who's been in pain for months to years and watch the smile on their face as they are free of that pain and can move, that is something that just makes me happy every day. And, we talked about before we had the conversation that, I'm going to give away a free ebook that will share, and we'll talk about this at the end, but we'll share the 5 most important stretches that the human body should do every day. And that affects pretty much 95% of the planet. And if you do those 5 stretches on a daily basis, and we'll talk more about that as we get into it, you'll find that a lot of the common aches and pains that people deal with, they'll go away. And what'd be more surprising, it's very different from what anyone else has ever told you about stretching your body.
Okay, well, I can't wait to get my copy of that, which I'll do as soon as we finish our conversation here. But I want to start with telling you how excited I am for this conversation.
Me too.
Those of you who don't know, guests are not just booked onto this show. I pre-interview every single person to make sure that they are in alignment with what the mission and vision is of Unlearning the Crap. And our conversation, I was so excited. First of all, before we even got to it, I saw the picture behind you. So I knew that we were connecting mind and body. Let's start right there. You said that one of the things that gives you absolute joy is releasing pain.
Yes.
We live in a society where there's a pill for every ill. Mm-hmm. I believe that pain is the body's communication tool.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
What do you think about that, and what is it telling us?
Okay, so there's a few things. We have what's called the vagus nerve, which runs along the spine, and it's in constant communication, the body to the brain. And actually the body talks to the brain and just sort of gives a check into the brain of what's going on below the neck. And so that communication needs to be clear. The problem is that the way we train everybody, and the way I was trained in school initially too, is we focus on the physical side of the body. So if I pull a muscle, or if I have a stiff low back, or anything happens, we understand how to physically fix something if it's torn or broken or needs to be replaced, so to speak. What we don't learn in medical school, and I'm talking from doctors all the way down to therapists, what we don't learn in school is how much the brain then and our emotions come into play. How much of our experiences in our lives that are literally trapped in the fascia and the muscles of the human body are actually hampering or changing the way we walk, the way we stand, the way we feel, that can down the road lead to bigger and bigger issues. Now, when we talk about muscles and we talk about fascia, everybody knows the physical side of the muscles, especially if you go to the gym, you work out, you lift weights, you go to stretch class and you pull as hard as you can and hold for as long as you can. And you think you're fighting with your muscles because you think your muscles have the ability to make a decision whether they like you or not today. The truth of the matter is that what you're fighting with is your own experiences, is your own mind. And so you start to do something and the brain is almost like, well, wait a minute, that could hurt. We got hurt before, that could hurt. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, that could hurt. Well, we don't do that. And if someone says, no, be tough, override that. And you start to pull and your body's going, no. The experience is we're not supposed to do that. Don't do that. Mayday, mayday, mayday. And then you pull something. And we think that our body is betraying us. It's not our body, it's our mind. And it didn't betray us. It's trying to tell us something. And sometimes we're too ignorant to listen to it. I've done that. So that's how I can speak from experience.
I love this because one of the things I'm always talking about is that our brain is physically designed to always be right.
Yes.
And there's three parts of our brain. The first part is the reptilian part, which is only designed to keep us safe and alive. That's all it cares about. It doesn't care about happy, healthy, wealthy, any of these other things. As long as you're continuing to breathe, it's doing its job.
Whether you're in a Rolls Royce or a Volkswagen, doesn't matter.
or a wheelchair, it
Exactly.
really doesn't. Yeah, it really does not matter. So how does your example about making a decision that I want to get physically fit, so I'm going to go to the gym. How do we override that part of our brain that says lifting that big heavy thing is going to hurt? I don't want to do it. Putting us into turning on our central nervous system, putting us into a stress mode and not injuring ourselves. How do we do this?
So number one, most people go to a gym. They decided, let's say January 1, what I call the New Year's resolutioners. This is my year to get in shape. Man, I'm probably would be in my mid 50s or early 50s. And I haven't lifted weights since high school, maybe a little bit in college. So I think I'm going to go to the gym, especially as a guy. I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to lift at 55 the same way I did at 18, because it worked at 18. It should work at 55. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Or somebody may go to the gym and especially, and I've seen this in women sometimes, they'll go to the gym and they see this cute guy. He's a trainer standing there. He looks really buff. He's been lifting weights like crazy. I just want to talk to that guy. I'm going to have him to train me because he's got big muscles. He must know what he's doing. And then they crawl out to their cars and can't figure out why tomorrow morning they can't lift a tongue up off their gums because they're so sore. Okay. So my advice to most people, if you haven't lifted weights in a long time, or you haven't done workouts in a long time, find a trainer that looks the way you would like to look. In other words, if you're 50 years old, look for a trainer that's in that 45 to 60 year range, looks fit, does well. They don't have the perfect body that you'd have at 21, but they look really good and they're healthy. That's probably the right person for you. Getting to bodybuilder, and nothing wrong with bodybuilders, but understand that as a bodybuilder, that person knows how to be a bodybuilder. That person, if they're 23, does not know what you feel like at 55. Okay. And it's like, so you got to take those things into consideration and be patient. You are not going to go to the gym on Monday with a belly and you're out of shape and think by next Monday, you're going to look like a bodybuilder. That's just not going to, I mean, these guys have been doing it for 15, 20 years, even though they're 25 years old. And it's like, it's not going to happen overnight. So those are the three things I would advise people right off the bat when they go.
Okay, so how do they deal with the mindset and let the mind not get triggered into the sympathetic nervous system and be on high alert where we can get injured easily?
Yes. So the first thing you want to do is you want to test your body. You want to test to see what weight level that you do that. Now, when I say that, if there's like 4 weights there and the bottom one is a 5 pound and the top one is 100 pound, I'm not saying go to the 100 pound weight first and try to pick it up your first time you're in the gym. Start with the 5 or the 10 pound weight and then see how well your body reacts. Can you do 10 repetitions with 10 pounds? Okay. My always thing is I say to people, if you're trying to get to 3 sets of 10, let's say you're doing 10 pounds, that first set of 10 should be relatively easy. That second set of 10, when you get to number 8, 9, and 10, should start to get a little tougher. And that third set of 10, by the time you get to 8, you're not sure you're going to make it to 10. That's about the right weight you want to be, okay? If you get to that third set of 10 at number 8 and you've given it all you got and you know you can't do number 9, be smart enough not to try to push yourself to do that. Now, you're probably, after your first few days, you're probably going to be slightly sore the day after, and especially the second day after. Do not panic. All because what you're doing is you are breaking down muscle tissue that's going to cause the muscle to get stronger. It's going to cause the muscle to get a little bigger over time. And it's a normal process. And we'll talk about later, how can you use self-massage to actually help reduce that soreness, and the same thing with the type of stretching that I do as well, to reduce that soreness and allow you to get back in the gym and do it again. Some people will think that they need to go every day. No. When you're working out with weights or rubber bands, or you're doing self-body weight, do it every other day to give your body time to recuperate so that you don't hurt yourself. Be smart. Be smart. Take your time with it. Be smart.
Okay. So one of the things I love to do on this podcast is take the life lessons from every area of the expertise of my guests. So what I heard you say was create small wins and create a safe environment for your brain by setting up realistic expectations.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
I also heard you say with the realistic expectations is create a sustainable schedule that works with you and your life, instead of trying to do the all at once campaign style that so many people do when they're trying to make a life change. That those small little pivots is what creates massive change.
Absolutely. I mean, you see it every year from January to like Valentine's Day. The amount of people who go in, they'll pay for an annual membership to a gym, and that January through the middle of February, they commit themselves to it. They're pushing themselves through it. About halfway through January, you'll see about 25% of them drop out, but almost all of them drop out by the middle of February. And the reason being is they're trying again at 50 to be 18 in less than 60 days. And that's just not going to work. And it's like, you got to have a plan. And it's like, when you have a plan that you can feel safe and secure, and you can feel yourself slowly starting to get better, and it'll kind of sneak up on you, because what will happen is you'll start to do something in your yard, or you're doing something, playing golf or some sport that you play, and you think to yourself on the way home, my gosh, I haven't done that much in a long time. And it'd be like a surprise. And that little surprise is what will keep you committed to keep coming back. But yeah, don't think you're going to, somebody training for a marathon. I have plenty of athletes training for marathons, and it's like they train for 6 months at the minimum before they run the race. Why do we think we're going to spend 30 days and we're going to look like a terrific warrior running around the backyard? It's just not going to happen like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Before we switch into mindset, I want to stay on this topic.
Okay.
Because in my early 50s, which was a while ago, I decided that I was going to be one of those people. I was going to finally get my body under control, because I'd been yo-yoing my entire life. I didn't know about the connection between mindset. I didn't know about root cause. I did not know about trauma or any of these other things that developed into my fibromyalgia. I didn't know any of these things. So I thought, I'm going to do it the right way. And I hired a trainer. And the trainer helped keep me on track. Beautiful. But my body at some point said, no more. And while I lost weight and gained strength, eventually my body started to put the weight back on, no matter what I was doing. And when that happened, I, like a lot of people, went, F it, what am I doing? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So I might as well go back to my junk food and my wine and everything else when it doesn't seem to be working. How do normal people like us
Yes.
conquer that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
defeatist attitude?
Yeah, that's a great question. 1997, I weighed 315 pounds. And I know a lot of my friends today, when they see me, it's like, oh, no, you never weighed that kind. But I weighed 315 pounds. Like I said earlier, I was a three-sport athlete when I was younger. I found myself having a difficult time walking around my one-bedroom apartment because I'd be out of breath. I would find myself walking a flight of steps and be out of breath. So it took me 18 months to lose that weight and to start getting back into shape. Now, I had help from a doctor who had just gone back to school to study nutrition. And she said to me, the important thing about getting in shape and losing weight is not just the losing the weight. Once you lose the weight, the question you ask yourself now is, now what? How do I maintain this weight? She said, because people have all kinds of ways of losing the weight. Losing the weight is the easy part. Keeping it off is the hard part. So she said, we're going to screw with your brain a little bit. We're going to get you thinking about things in a different way. And she started changing my not perception, but my relationship with food in such a way that I began to look at food purely as fuel, no different than my car, you see. So when you start to look at food more like fuel you would put in your car, her example was, people will talk about, well, fast food is convenient, it's cheap, you can go to a restaurant, it's a little more convenient, I don't have to cook it, blah, blah, blah. The trying to go home is like the hard way. She said, so your car runs off of unleaded gas? And I said, yes. And she said, all right, so you go to a gas station, there's 3 pumps. The first one is kerosene. It's the cheapest of the 3, and it's the first one there. It's the most convenient. And I said, yeah, but my car runs on unleaded gas. And she goes, exactly. So you go to the second pump. It's not quite as convenient, a little more expensive, but it's way cheaper than the unleaded. How about that one? And I said, no, my car runs on unleaded. And she said, that's exactly right. So does your body. Your body doesn't even know what you're putting into your system, number one. So that was where we started. And then it took me 18 months to lose that weight, but I was also exercising along the way. And so I got to the point, like I said earlier, walking around my apartment was difficult. And I just looked at it and I said, I am doing this. I've got help here. I'm doing this. And there were days where I just wanted to sit on the sofa, eat a bonbon and say, forget it. And I just said to myself, I've got to do this for me. I was 37, 38 years old. My family is high history of heart disease and strokes. And this doctor, actually, she gave me a physical at 37. What got me started with this was that she said to me, I would put my money on the fact that by the time you're 40, you'll probably have a heart attack or stroke. And I was like, holy cow. And that kept playing in my head of how I was going to stay safe. And she helped me get through that. And I lost the weight. Now, once I lost the weight and I kept pursuing going to the gym and working out, then I developed low back pain. And like you, I was like, oh, for heaven's sake. I lose the weight. I look great. Now I can't even stand up out of my car. And then that's what led me to doing what I'm doing today. And we can talk about that a little bit later. Yeah. So that is, it's getting that mindset. It's getting that goal. Keep that picture of that goal. Make that goal realistic, but keep that picture of that goal in your head. And even on days when you feel like it's not quite what you want to do. Hello. Oh, you still there?
Okay.
Okay. I would have been black. Sorry about that. But anyway, so even on days when it looks kind of like it'd be tough, I set myself up with a routine. So on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and I've done this now for almost 3 years, and I go to the gym to work out. My clothes are laid out and everything is set so that when I get up at 4:30, by 4:38, I'm in my car and on the way to the gym. So I'm not going to turn around and go back. If I get up and I thought, well, I'm going to have my coffee, maybe I have a little bit of breakfast, and I sit there in my chair for a little bit, there's a good chance I probably won't go to that gym. So you have to make a plan that there's no turning back. You just go do it. And that's how I do it.
That sounds a little bit like Atomic Habits, where you take small habits and you layer them on each other.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Lay the clothes out, put the shoes on, get in the car before the brain knows what's happening.
Exactly. So by the time
Start
I
the
pull into the
momentum.
gym, the brain says, the logic part kicks in and goes, "You're too far away to turn around now. You're already here. It's too late."
This is a perfect example of how we can be empowered and rewire our own brains.
Yes.
But I'm here to challenge you, and I'm here
Okay.
to do the yeah, but that I know I'm hearing from my own brain as well as from people who are probably listening.
Yes.
So, we said in the beginning that the brain has traumas, it
Yeah.
has crap, it has conditioned responses and automatic programming. So, your solution sounds so wonderful and
Yeah.
idyllic and everything down the road, but that does not sound like where some of us are in this exact
Yes.
moment. Well, we're still carrying our crap, we haven't unlearned it yet.
Right.
How do you see the crap of our belief system, our thoughts, our habits, our uh, traditional society that we've lived in, our family of origin, all of these things? How do we begin to unlearn it so that our body can reach a natural, healthy homeostasis?
Oh, great question. Great question. So one of the things that I taught my daughters when they were younger, they're now 41 and 38. I feel old when I tell people that, but I always said to them, "You are where you are by choices that you make." And unfortunately, we all make choices based on our experiences and based on our past. And so when you start to look at your life and you look in the mirror and you go, I'd like to lose 15, 20 pounds, maybe 30 pounds. I'd like to get in better shape. And then you start to think to yourself, but mom and dad were overweight and it is a genetic kind of thing, and I am 42. So I don't really have to look great at this point, and I look okay. And then you go back and you leave the mirror, and so now you feel good, and then you come back, look in the mirror again, and you go, yeah, but I have a wrinkle right here. Yeah, I have a little bit of fat over here. And then you go through that whole thing again, and it's like, well, but I'm only 42. I got plenty of time. I can, like, this is fine. And I like my vodka tonics. They are just really good things to have. And my mom and dad always had vodka tonics and so when you start to look at that, being aware of, am I thinking this because it's really true and logical? Or am I thinking this because this is the way I've always done it? And,
Mm.
in many cases, I was lucky. My parents were not drinkers, but in a lot of families, mom and dad come home and the first thing they do is they either used to be smoke when I was a kid, but they'd also have a drink. And, I got to relax myself. I've got to get into this. It's been a hectic day. I deserve a drink because it's been a tough day. And so you want to start being a little more aware of your thoughts. And is this an automatic thought? Do I always think this? Or how about if I just change the way I think about that for a second? And that sometimes can be scary because it's a total different paradigm shift from where you've lived your entire life. So for me, everybody kept saying, well, you're 37 years old. You have like plenty of time. And I said, but I don't. My dad had angina at 49, which was affecting his heart. And they said, well, what are you going to do? It's genetic. You can't really change that. And I go, that's not true. Because I started reading about that. And it was like, genetics means you have the potential for it. But if you check it early enough, in a lot of cases, you might be able to really reduce your risk, if you understand that and you work with that. So I had to play with my own mind to get out of my own way, because as a guy, we're told to eat a ton of things because you're a big boy. You have to eat all this food. My gosh, especially if mom and grandma are cooking for you, you got to eat all this food. So I'm cramming down 4,000 and 5,000 calories a day because I was a big boy. My sister was a girl. She's supposed to have like 2 or 3 pieces of lettuce because that's all she needed. She was just a girl, you see. So we have all this mess, this crap that is put in our heads that we really have to really focus and be mindful of, and actually start to question some of your own thoughts. Is this really true? Is it not? And what I found in my life was a lot of it just was not. And so when I started looking there, I just changed. Yeah, I started changing a little bit, not everything. I mean, it's too scary to try to change all of that. I mean, you can't go back in your past and change all of it, although it would be nice in some cases. But little things that you do differently, and how you do things, even in relationships, little things. I mean, the person I was in my first relationship, I'm a very different person in my second relationship, and it's going way better because I made some good choices there. But the point of the matter is you have to first be aware of the decisions that you're making, and especially if you're not making. Yeah.
Yes, that is so in alignment with where I believe empowerment comes from. Self-awareness, challenging your own thoughts, challenging your beliefs, even if after the challenge you say, yeah, I still believe that, and I choose to keep it because it's empowering for me.
Yep. And that's okay. That's okay. And it's like, as long as it's working for you, that's okay. But if you're totally unhappy with some part of your life, being aware of what decisions am I making that's keeping me there will change a lot of things, good or bad.
So let's move on to the fascia.
Okay.
Because I know what fascia is, but I don't know that everybody who's listening to this conversation does.
Right.
Could you explain what that is in our body?
Yeah. So fascia is soft tissue. It's not muscle, but it's soft tissue that literally holds everything together. Now, fascia, when it's healthy, is very wet, very lubricated. And the reason for that is, in fact, I just got back from Costa Rica last week where I took a class in cranial sacral work. So when you touch the body in certain ways, you can feel the fluid in the body moving from side to side, front to back, depending on what part of the body that you're on. We don't see it with the naked eye. But if you put your hands on someone and you really zoom in to feel their body, you can literally feel their body just sort of like moving from side to side, either way. Okay. So what that fascia does, with the lubrication, if it's well lubricated, really wet, the fascia just sort of moves like this inside of the body for balance. It allows our bodies, our organs to really be able to work properly. And the muscle system working around that allows that to work properly so that we have better balance, not just standing up balance, but better balance in our health, so that our digestive system, cardiovascular system, the brain, everybody seems to work together. And then in the spine itself, we have what's called cerebral spinal fluid that literally is tracking up the spinal cord, up and over the brain, that while you're sleeping at night, for instance, is washing over the brain to help keep a lot of the beta amyloid plaque out of the brain. And so this fluid becomes real important. Now, for some people, especially people who don't move a lot, who are not really taking care of their bodies, this fascia can become sticky. And when it becomes sticky, it becomes harder to breathe. It becomes harder to digest your food. It becomes harder to eliminate the waste of your body. It becomes harder to move, and inflammation starts to rise, which creates a lot of pain for people. So most people don't really talk about fascia a lot, just like they don't talk a whole lot about muscles beyond working out and making their muscles stronger. But having this soft tissue work properly, because it is tied to the emotions and the energetics of the body, to have that fascia and that muscle system wet and soft and moving just like it's lubricated really well, our bodies then can respond to so many things that will keep us healthy. The problem is that we live such a sedentary lifestyle that the fascia for so many people becomes sticky, and now it becomes difficult for their systems to all work properly.
Okay, I want to come back to the sticky fascia. So I'm writing that down. I'm going to ask that you hold that thought as well. But before I move on to that, I want to connect the neuroprogramming and the hormones of stress and cortisol, as well as trauma. When we do not process that through our normal lymphatic system or our emotions, whatever, I've heard that those chemicals, those hormones, generally get trapped in our fascia. Is that true?
I would probably, from my opinion, would probably say no. What the hormones do is that they turn, in other words, they turn things on that can create some feelings. What happens with the fascia is that as you become frustrated, you become afraid, you become lethargic, the muscle system and the fascia will begin to tighten on you. And as they begin to tighten on you, it can squeeze out a lot of the fluid that's in those tissues, which can make them stickier, going back to that term. But with the hormones then are driving your thought process, is driving how you feel, and how your body then reacts. So it's more of a reactant to anything else, whether you're dealing with dopamine or serotonin or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was referring to those suppressed, those ones
Yes.
that
Okay.
are trapped in our bodies.
Yes.
I remember the very first time that I went to a chiropractor who was connecting what we call now woo-woo
Right.
to the physical body.
Mhm.
And he touched a part of my body, and he asked me a direct question about a trauma that I had. And
Mhm.
when he touched that area, memories of that he just mentioned
Mhm.
popped up into my brain, and I became emotional. And
Mhm.
he was the one who told me that that memory was stored in that area of my body.
That I would agree with. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So what happens is you've been in a car accident, you fell off your bike, you fell out of a tree or something like that. Until you address the muscles and the fascia of the body and the areas that you've been injured, okay, the body then remembers that. And of course, the brain is a driver for that. But what happens is that anytime that you get close to somebody touching that area or hitting that area, the brain's first reaction is, oh, we've had a problem here. Don't touch that. Don't touch that. Okay. When someone touches you like he did and it makes you emotional, that release, in other words, you can hit certain muscle areas and fascial areas. When you breathe and you allow your brain to just let go, that's where that emotional release came in, because you were holding that emotion right there. That fear was right there. And then when you hit that and the body breathed out, the brain just like let go, then that spurs an emotional release often for people. It's not unusual when you're working with fascia to have people lay and cry, male or female, doesn't matter.
So it is honoring that which was trapped,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging its presence,
Mm-hmm.
being witness so that it can complete its process.
Right, right. And then once the brain can see that I can move that shoulder, I can move that hip, I can move that knee, and there's no pain, there's no stress.
Wow.
I see it a lot with people like having joint replacements, knees and hips and so forth. And um, you don't really go to a doctor on Friday morning and say, Doc, my knee's hurting. And he says to you, you know what, I got an opening at 1, come back and I'll replace it at 1. They don't quite do it that way. So it usually takes months to even sometimes a year or so before that happens.
15 years.
15 years, exactly right. So what happens there is that you have that knee pain or that hip pain, and the brain then is trying to find ways for you to walk to reduce as much of that pain as possible. I mean, the brain would love to have it zeroed out, but chances are that's not going to happen. So you start to change the way you walk. Now, one of the things that I've noticed with people, they go in and they have a knee replacement, they go to PT, they're doing a rehab, and they'll come out and they'll say, well, my knees feel worse now than when I went in. I'm disappointed. Well, what's happening is that the body's having to reset itself to go back to walking normally. Now, a lot of times in rehab, they don't necessarily get into walking normally. So by the time I get them, that's what we start to work on, is how to get them back to walking normally. And then once you can do that, then the brain starts to release those muscles, because now it sees that I can walk on this knee and not have pain.
Okay, so as someone who waited 15 years
Mm-hmm.
because it was fibromyalgia, joint pain. It was a whole lifestyle. It was blah, blah, blah. I ended up having both knees replaced. And actually, I think it's 2 years for my first knee, and it'll be almost 2 years for the second knee.
Right.
I still cannot kneel on my knees. My knees are still very numb, the whole from my knee to my ankle. And all of the muscles are still bound so tight that I have plantar fasciitis. Walking is difficult. So the surgeon did his part.
Right.
But I know that I am missing something along the way.
Absolutely. So I had lunch years ago with an orthopedist who's well known here in town, and we were talking about joint replacements. In fact, we were actually working on one of his relatives, and he said to me, we were talking about muscles, and he'd asked me questions about the muscles, and he said to me, you know, if they come in with tight muscles, all I'm replacing is the bone. They're going to go out with tight muscles. And I laughed and I said, you know, there's a lot that's exactly right, because what happens is that what I have found is that if people began the stretching routine that I teach them prior to having their knee or hip replaced, the amount of time that they recover becomes far less, because now the PT doesn't have to battle with the muscles themselves. So if 15 years you've been dealing with this knee pain and you change the way you walk, the muscles get tight and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you got a new knee. But they didn't change the fascia. They didn't change the brain. They didn't change the muscles. They just changed the knee. The bone part of the knee was it. So now the next step is to retrain the body to be able to work both legs at the same way, and then change the way you walk. So the plantar fascia is actually an issue with the upper part of the 4 calf muscles in your leg. It has nothing to do or little to do with your heel. The pain in your heel is the symptom of plantar fascia. Now, the reason you get that is that the 4 quadricep muscles above the knee on the front of the thighs are not extending properly. You're probably wearing shoes with thicker soles, so the ankle's not bending properly. And so then that stiffens the calf muscles, is also going to stiffen the hamstrings on the back of the thighs. And so you start to press nerves and you make things numb. And then the pain just continues to get worse and worse over time. So it's learning how to get those muscles to release. There's special stretches for that you can do. And learning that when you see something like plantar fasciitis, everybody treats the heel, doctors included. They put stuff in your shoes. Has little to do with that. Plantar fasciitis, you can knock out in 2 or 3 days.
What?
It's not something to go on for years. And I've had people lay here laughing on my table where they'd had plantar fasciitis for months to years, and I'd work on them. They'd come back within 3 or 4 days, and it's like, it's gone. And I'm like, exactly. Once you understand what causes it, you can fix it. But you see, we're trained to treat symptoms, not causes.
Absolutely.
So when your heel hurts, I'm going to put a cup in your heel. I'll give you a shot in your heel. You see what I'm saying?
I do know my calf is hard as a rock.
You got 4 muscles there, not 1. So
okay.
the calf, this is a great time to talk about the calf. The calf is the most important part of the human body for mobility, and yet it's the least studied part of the entire body. So when you look at the 4 calf muscles, they control your foot vertically for walking, laterally for balance, and rotation. If you have any golfers out there who has back pain from playing golf, there's probably nothing wrong with their back. There's probably something wrong with their calves and their hamstrings. So the average person will say, I stretch my calves all the time at the gym. What do? Well, they'll stand on a slant board, or they'll drop their heel off of a step or a block, or they'll lean against a wall thinking they're stretching their calves. They have never stretched their calves in their entire lives, especially the inside-outside calf muscle. They don't even know it exists. And so what they're stretching is their Achilles tendon. If you have Achilles tendonitis, leaning against the wall and stretching is okay to stretch that for the Achilles tendonitis. But if you're trying to stretch your calves to avoid plantar fasciitis, you're wasting your time doing that. And I don't care how many degrees that person has that's talking to you. The calf, you got 4 muscles there that you have to stretch all 4 muscles with a yoga strap or a rope. That's the only way you're going to do that.
Okay, we're going to have to get into this more one-on-one about this. And I'm going to encourage anyone who has lower back pain or plantar fasciitis or knee joint issues that they get your free guide and connect with you so that you can help them with their one-on-one.
Yes, and they can also go to my YouTube channel and see 180 free videos as well that help them learn this stuff. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I love how we're connecting the root cause of everything. Like you just even went into the physical root cause of my plantar fasciitis, that it has nothing to do with my foot. I know it has nothing to do with my foot, but nobody's ever said it was my calves.
Exactly.
So hearing that, well, yeah, I've had really tight calves my entire life.
Yeah.
You know, this is just something since childhood. I used to tear my tendons and twist my ankles and sprain my ankles all the time.
Yes. So I have a trick for you. I have a trick for you. So we talked about the rubber band in our pre-interview. Remember that? So I got a really nice white rubber band. Okay. So everybody can see that this rubber band is a certain length. However, if I keep twisting this rubber band, it's going to keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter, right? Now, all right. So this is a tight muscle. So when I want to stretch it out, I'm not trying to lengthen to make this longer this way. Okay. What I'm trying to do is to release this. Yeah, I'm just trying to release this back out to its original length because it's attached on both ends. But my gosh, how many times you go to the gym and you see this thing twisted and you see someone trying to do this with their muscle?
Yes.
That's how we're all taught to stretch. And what we want to do is we just want to take that pressure out and go back to its full length. And you take the pressure off the joints. You take the pressure off the nerves. You take the pressure off the bones. You see, these muscles cross over the bone. So if this is a calf muscle, for instance, the top part up here is attached above the knee. The bottom part down here is attached down around the arch of the foot. So think about when you wake up with plantar fasciitis, as long as you're laying with your foot sort of pointed outward like that, you're fine. It's when you stand up and the foot comes here, you have pain. What changed? This didn't change. What changed was here. If I release this, my foot goes here, I'm no pain. I contract here to bring my foot back up, I have pain.
And it's all because the muscle has been stretched to the point of it aggravating something else.
Not so much stretch, but it's just, remember this, every time you have a thought, a feeling, you're doing this to your muscles all over your body, and it's just doing that. And so what we want to do with the stretch is we want to just take it back out so that it's more like that, and then it's flexible.
Wow.
Same thing with the back. Same thing with the back. People wake up with low back pain. I have a few people all the time say, well, I get up in the morning, my back feels kind of stiff, but if I walk around for a little while, it goes away. And I always laugh and I always say to them, you don't have a back problem. What? But my back hurts. And I go, I know, you have a thigh problem. So if you stand up after sitting for a while or laying in bed, and to stand up straight becomes difficult, feels more painful in your back, chances are you'll find that the front of your thighs, there's 4 muscles there, or the inner thighs are tight. Now, if you sit down, the pain goes away. You stand up, the pain comes back in. What happens is that when the front of the thighs are tight, it pulls the pelvis forward. I just lost you again. Let's see if we can come back. There we go. I don't know what's happening here. Anyway, so what happens is it pulls the pelvis forward, which increases the curve in the small of your back, causing pain when you stand up straight. Now, if it's an inner thigh, you'll hit the same back pain, but it'd be in the middle of your back. Now, if your hamstrings on the back are tight, then you'll have back pain when you sit down, but it'll go away when you stand up. So is that a problem with your thighs or a problem with your back?
And that is something we never talk about, is the direct causal, the relation of cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
We concentrate on the effects, and we give ourselves pills and well, I call it pills and platitudes, trying to make the symptoms go away.
Yeah.
And I love how you are taking us to root cause.
Right.
And full empowerment by understanding that
Yes.
all of this is within our own control.
Every bit of it is within your control. Yeah. That's the amazing part. And it's like, again, even with this, we talked earlier about getting people to exercise. Even with this, they'll say to me, it feels really good. I come here, you work on me, I feel great. I just can't seem to get myself to do it. And I'm like, seriously, your back doesn't hurt bad enough that you want to stop it? I just can't get myself to do it. And then after a while, they'll figure it out and they'll come in and go, I got it.
So what shifts for those people?
They get to a point of,
if we know what is going to shift it, then we can make that as a part of the conscious decision in the beginning.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Number one is confidence. They think that I have some magical power that I can touch them and heal them. And of course, I said to a gentleman one time that I knew very well, he was saying something to that effect. And I said, oh, you wanted Jesus. He's 2 doors down the hallway. You missed out the wrong door. Of course, he laughed about that. But part of it is confidence. They don't think they have the ability to do that because they're not a doctor or a therapist. And the truth of the matter is you need to understand you can control your own body. Yeah. Yeah.
That is part of the massive crap that we were taught. We were taught not to trust ourselves. We were taught not to know how our biochemistry, our body works. We were taught to put our faith in others, in doctors, in the system, in anything and anybody but ourselves. And this is why I wanted you on this podcast. This is exactly the message, that we all have it within ourselves.
Yes, we
just haven't been taught.
We just haven't been. I was just at like I said earlier, I was just at a school or class for cranial sacral that had 20 therapists, massage therapists in the room. I was amazed at how many people were having a hard time feeling the human body. They knew the physical side. They could physically massage you. They could physically move you around, but how to just place their hands on you and feel what's going on inside of your body, they were having a hard time. And it was like anybody who could do that, they would think of us as being someone special. And it's like, no, it's just quieting your mind enough to just allow your body to just feel. And I don't care who you are. If you quiet your mind enough and you allow your body to just feel, you can do it on your own body and just feel what's going on in your body. Use the wonderment of a child. What's in there? What's going on in there? You can start to feel your body doing things that you had no idea it was doing. And you have so much control over what you eat, how you move, how you think. But it's about being aware and trusting in yourself to say, look, I'm not getting what I want. What is it that I'm not doing right here? And not be afraid to change some things that you thought were holier than thou that you couldn't change.
Yeah, because we hear this thought process a lot, but this is the way I've always been. It's worked for me for this long.
But has it?
Yeah, because we normalize.
Right.
I lived in constant, never-ending pain. I did not know that people lived without living in constant pain. I thought it was normal.
Right.
So because it was so normal for me, my brain had normalized it, and I just assumed that everybody lived like this. So I never told the doctors that I was in pain because I had normalized it.
Well, the funny thing is, so are they in many cases. I mean, I work on doctors often, and they're in the same amount of pain. And it's like, I'm explaining to them exactly what I'm explaining to you. They don't have any idea either. They study the physical side of the human body. not the
So
emotional side.
here we are, taught to trust a system that wasn't trained on how to handle it.
Right, right, right.
Oh,
Yeah.
no wonder it's a mess.
Yeah, I mean, I had to I helped one of my clients. She's in her late 60s with fibromyalgia, and she had given up tennis and given up snow skiing. I got her back to playing tennis 3 times a week and snow skiing 4 or 5 times a year without pain. Her brother was an
Wow.
orthopedist, and he wanted to come in to meet me. We spent 3 hours talking about the muscles. And his remark at the end was, after he offered me a job in Denver, and which I turned him down, it was too cold. Why don't they teach this in medical school? Why don't they teach it in massage school? Why don't they teach it in PT school? I don't know. I mean, I went back to University of South Florida from 2015 to 2018. And when I started talking about it to a couple of the professors, they asked me if I would teach that in a class, if they'd give me an hour. And I go, well, yeah, sure. It's not in any book.
Wow.
It's a sad thing. It's kind of scary, but it's sad. Yeah.
And that's why having these conversations is so important, because once we become aware, we can't unknow what we know now.
Exactly right. At 40 years old, I was in a lot of pain. At 65, I wake up in no pain. Excuse me.
Wow. Okay. Well, you definitely give me hope. And all of these things that I had notes on that I wanted to talk to you about from your unlearning, we have used up our time. But there's so much more that I know that we could talk about, which tells me that it is imperative that anyone else who has more questions than they have answers right now, that it is in their best interest to at least have a conversation, to at least begin the journey to see if you and the information you have is right for them.
Right.
How do they find you? And who do you work with, and how do you work with them?
Okay, great. I do in office practice. I do consultation online with people. Like I said earlier, I have 180 free videos that I'll delve into what causes this type of pain. Why do most treatments fail or fall short, and then give them part of the video on how to actually solve it with the stretching. And you can just go to YouTube and type in The Muscle Repair Shop, and you'll be able to find them there. I have a website at musclerepairshop.com. From there, you can sign up for a weekly newsletter that, again, talks about specific ailments, why most treatments fail, and then videos on how to solve that problem. You can also contact me by email, which is on my website, butch@musclerepairshop.com, or you can call me directly here on the phone number that's on my website. We can set up a Zoom call, and we can sit and talk about what you're feeling, what are the possibilities. And if you decide you want to work by online, we can do that as well. I've worked with people all over the world that way too. But the biggest thing is be ready to learn, be willing to do the work. I'm nothing more than a guide, and my job is to help you understand what's going on with your body, and then give you the tools that you can resolve your issue on your own. And then the nice thing is that once you learn and you do these stretches and self-massage on a daily basis, and you change the mindset, what you will find is that even as you get older, you will have less and less pain in most cases.
So we are not doomed to spiral down the older we get.
No. I mean, I've had at my 50th birthday party, all my friends kept saying, you wait till tomorrow. You're going to feel terrible at 55. You're going to feel terrible at 60. And finally at my 65th, it's like, I am not waiting for pain to show up. It's not showing up. I'm not waiting for it. Everybody's waiting for it. It's like Javon, and I said, listen, all my friends here, they go to doctors. Well, on Tuesday, I go to my cardiologist. On Wednesday, I go to my neurologist. Who do you go see? And I go see no one. I have a primary care that I see her once a year. She's a concierge. And she said, instead of you paying a membership, why don't you just pay me for the one visit every year? That's about all I'll need to see you. That's what I do.
Well, you give us all hope. And I want to thank you so much
Thank you.
for the information and the depth of the conversation, and just how amazingly informative and charming and easy listening you are. You've taken these complicated subjects and you've made them so palatable that
Yes.
really allows us to know that we are the source of our own empowerment.
Absolutely. I mean, to see someone in their 80s and their 90s actually lose pain that they had for a long time, and to see the smile on their face is what makes it worth it every day. And I just hate the fact that so many people are not knowledgeable of how to solve their pain. And it pains me to watch people when they're just stuck.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time. And thank you for tuning in for another episode of Unlearn the Crap. My name is Kathy Baldwin. I am your host. And if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And of course, a review of Butch or myself will always be appreciated. Until next time, don't forget to challenge everything so that you can accomplish anything. Thank you for joining me on this episode of The Unlearning Curve. I hope you enjoyed it. If something landed for you today, make sure to follow, like, comment, and share, and check out all the other full interviews and other episodes of Unlearn the Crap and Level Up podcast, where you'll find deeper conversations, expert guests, and real stories from people just like you who are unlearning their crap and choosing clarity. Visit me at kathybaldwin.me and get all my free resources. Check out my coaching programs as well as my books. Until next time, keep showing up, keep unlearning, and keep leveling up, because your soul is calling.